Hey guys, Brian here from the SEO Optimist. It's been a while since I've done video content, and this morning I was about halfway into writing a blog post when it occurred to me, this topic actually would lend itself better to a video than a blog post. Why don't I do that? So what I want to talk about today is what content looks like when it's clearly written only for machines and how that's a little bit sneakier than that seems. And why even when you can win with that, you don't really win as much as you think you do. In the old days, when someone probably described content as being written only for machines, what they meant was poorly written, spun articles. There were machines, there were tools that would basically take one piece of content that you wrote and would use algorithms to basically rewrite your content so that you could post a million versions of the same thing very quickly. Or people would outsource to people in different countries than they lived in who did not have a strong command of that language to spin a whole bunch of content very quickly. That's what you meant years ago. What we're talking about now is often content that in itself might read okay, it's decently written, but the way that it's implemented makes it obvious that the content was really only created for the benefit it would have in search engines and did not keep the reader in mind at all. And what's interesting about this is, despite the fact that for years, reps from Google and popular SEO blogs have all trumpeted the idea that Google doesn't like duplicated content. Google doesn't like content that is not useful to readers. And it has gotten better at determining those things. However, this is one of those situations where seeing is believing. What do you make of it if, despite their claims that that's how it works, over and over again, you see content ranking better than everything else on page one that breaks all of these rules? One of my favorite examples of it even was from years ago, looking up video game tips and content, or even looking up phone tech. A lot of the things that ranked numbers 1, 2, all the way sometimes up to 5 on the first page were sites that had almost exactly the same content as each other. The design of the site would be different, the domain is different, they don't overtly seem to have anything to do with each other in an affiliate sense, and yet when you looked at the content of them, it's unclear who was the original, but they all basically plagiarized each other, and all 6 of them rank top, better than any other unique content talking about that topic on the internet. Why is that? And you might think, well, but that's temporary. They won't last. They won't rank like that for long, because once Google catches on to that, it's going to de-rank them and you won't see that anymore. Except that in those cases, I repeated that search over the course of several months just to see, and they consistently stayed up there, ranking better than everything else. Another big example that I've seen in blogs and things is where someone will cover a topic, say in the SEO space, how to handle your local directory listings. And rather than having one definitive article that talks about doing that with logical subheadings breaking out, here's how you would do Yelp, and here's how you would do your Google My Business listing, and here's how you would do Urban Spoon or something else. Rather than that, it would be like a post only about Yelp, and then another post with an almost identical title covering one of the other ones, and then another post with an almost identical title covering one of the other ones. Even if that works, I mean, it seems like it shouldn't, but in some cases it seems that it does work. But even when it does for search, you have to ask yourself, is that useful to readers? Because I'm thinking of myself as a reader, and if I want to learn about getting control of my local directories, do I want to have to read 7 articles in order to figure out how to do the top 5 to 7 of them? No, I don't. I would much rather have one article that just gives me the goods and is done. And so when you see stuff like that, even when it works on Google, at the same time you're like, that's not a good experience for the reader at all. And unless ranking is just a vanity thing, like you want to be number 1 for a search just so you can point at yourself and say, I rank for that, aren't I awesome? Unless it's that, what good is it to rank for something if you're creating such a terrible experience for the reader? Because what do you think they're going to do when they read that content? You think they're going to call? You think they're going to recommend that content or share it to somebody else when it was such a pain in the butt for them to take it all in? The same concept goes on with city pages. Now, I've talked about that in the blog before, and if you're going to do it the quote-unquote right way, it's challenging because you have to basically keep talking about your business and selling it for various cities that you're creating these pages for without totally reiterating yourself over and over again. That can be kind of tough progressively as you make these pages. And yet, some websites that I've looked at, especially in my own industry, that rank really well have entirely duplicated city pages. They will like have certain content written up, and then the other half a dozen city pages they have on their site are verbatim, same content. The only phrasing that's different is the city that's being referenced. According to Google's rules, you wouldn't think that would rank at all, and yet they rank better than everyone else. That's not an example per se of being a bad user experience, because very likely someone doing a search for that service in a given city is not going to look at all of the other city pages on that site. They're only reading the one, so it doesn't matter if that content is the same as others. So you can kind of get away with it there, but it is still surprising where it works, since that goes directly in the face of what Google says is supposed to work. I know that this philosophy is consistent in this industry. On one SEO consulting gig I took over where they had been working with a different agency before that, they had said to me, well, that agency said, the blogs are really just there to help our rankings on Google. No one's actually going to read it, so it doesn't matter. And they asked me what I thought, and I was like, I couldn't disagree more. Maybe that's because I come from a background of writing, so artistically speaking, the idea to me of putting all this time into writing blog posts that as you do it, no one's ever going to look at any of this at all, just, it sucks. Like to think about it that way. But I think that is a philosophy that a lot of people have when they're doing blogs, and so it leads to that kind of content, because if you do go into it thinking no one's ever going to read this post exists solely to reinforce my authority on a topic, and it's going to make some other page on my site rank, and that's the one I want people to read, well, how much time are you going to spend on that post? And you are very tempted to spin and recreate. I like to begin everything I write with the assumption, hopefully someone is going to read it, and my whole philosophy to SEO has been, ranking is really only half the battle. Like, I think you kind of have to be one part technician and one part copywriter to really nail SEO, because ask yourself this question. Suppose you rank number 1, number 2, you're in the top 3 for a keyword, and someone does click you out of search results, and they're on your page. Now what? If you don't do a good job of establishing rapport or making somebody like you or trust you enough to make a phone call or at least ask for some clarification, have a conversation with you for more details, if you don't do that, what's the point of ranking other than vanity? And I just am not convinced content like what I've been talking about really does that. Now, in cases where I've talked about that with the city pages and stuff in my industry, you have SEO websites selling SEO that employ some of these tactics to rank. It makes sense why they would do it. A lot of it is vanity. They like to be able to point at the fact that they rank number 1 for something and say, isn't this proof that I'm an awesome SEO guy because I rank for all of these things locally over all of my competition? Who would you pick? Of course, you would want to pick that guy. I'm not begrudging that as a marketing tactic. It makes sense. But for almost any other industry, it doesn't make nearly as much sense, I don't think, to take the ego aspect of ranking for something solely for doing that. And so I guess, in summary, the overall point that I'm making is twofold. One, seeing is believing with what works on Google. There are a lot of commonly made tips on what Google supposedly likes or doesn't like that end up not always being true, because you see that Google does reward things that it's supposed to not like. And so you can even go into SEO saying, I don't care whether it's white hat, black hat, whether it's frowned upon. I'm going to do whatever works. I want to win. That's okay as a strategy, and you can actually win with a lot of these topics that you're quote-unquote not supposed to. And I guess I would urge you to ask yourself, if you're getting into your own SEO for your site, what impression do I want to create to my reader? Because what if they go to my blog page and they see that I've got 6 blog posts in a row that are like exact duplicate titles except for one word? I believe you're sending a message right there that you're not really writing the blog for the reader, And that has an effect on perception when they see that. There's a shift in trust and credibility right there when they see that. And just give that some thought. Hope this was helpful to you guys. Sorry if it's a little long-winded. This is a topic I just wanted to riff on for a few, but I do want to get into doing more regular video content. So join me in the next one, and I appreciate you watching.